So this is the inaugural launch. This is the episode 1 of my podcast that I've been talking about doing for a very long time. And after I saw your video, I was like, this is the woman that I want to be the first guest. So I'm so excited to be with you, Miss Kim Klacik. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for that. I'm excited. First guest. Yay.
Yeah, you're the first. And I want to know your story. I want to know how you got into politics, but I really want to dive right in and ask you, why should the Democratic Party fear Kim Klacik?
Well, I think they should fear not just myself, but all of the people now basically looking for a change and understanding what their policies has done to many communities in this country. For me, I think we're now seeing a lot more Democrats being exposed, especially in Baltimore City. I think thanks to the campaign video, which I would take full credit for, but I can't because Benny Johnson is the one that directed and produced that video. And
that video was fire. It was really well done. That was when I saw that, and I immediately was like, I have to reach out to you. And then within days of that, it went completely viral, blew up. You were asked to speak at the RNC. It was a very, very huge thing for you, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like the biggest thing that's happened to me, while campaigning. We've been campaigning now for about a year. So Benny Johnson reached out and said, hey, I think I can take your message and really put it together for you in a 3-minute video to really get it across. Just yesterday, we completed video number 2, our campaign ad that will go into on television, a commercial buy. That first ad, we never actually even put that on TV. That was only released on social media. So we were so thankful that it did so well. But this second one is about solutions, right? And what we plan to do once getting in office. So that should be out, I would hope, by next week.
So that, obviously it's a perfect lead into the second question. Like what, you were surrounded by Democrats. Your parents were Democrats. You were from a Democratic district. What made you switch, flip the script and go more conservative? Or have you always been more conservative and it was just something that naturally was a natural progression?
Yeah, I think, in general, I think Black Americans are naturally conservative. A lot of us grow up in the church. A lot of us have very conservative parents with lots of rules and, discipline. And so I think, for us, we are naturally conservative. But, when you, like you said, you live in a house where you're having the news filtered by your parents and they are Democrats, if they only watch certain networks, you only see some, certain stories or hear certain things. So I think it was after I voted for President Obama in 2008. And I was so excited, like everyone else, to have this first Black president. And I thought this is a great time to share that overcoming moment and story. But he got in office and he didn't talk about the things that I believe are so great in his life. By all appearances, he's a great husband. He's a great father. He's about family structure and he's for education. His daughters are very well educated. But he never actually talked about those things. He didn't, harp on personal responsibility. So I was kind of upset about that because I thought, now we can finally stop saying, there is this boogeyman, this keeping us down by some white guy that, we never see. But apparently, according to liberals, he's existing. But I thought it was a great time to just share in that moment with him. But he did not go in that direction. And I questioned why. And I did a little research for myself. And realized, a lot of the Democrat policies, I think, is what got us into this mess. And when I say mess, I can say, if you saw the campaign ad, like we've just talked about, Baltimore City has been under Democrat rule for 53 years. And that is the results. We have here the murder rate's 10 times the national average. Our poverty rate's 20%. And a lot of people say, well, how could you blame one party? And it's like, they're in charge. They're the only ones that have been in charge. And more
I grew up in Detroit, so I know. I feel like Detroit and Baltimore have just been Baltimore, and Philadelphia. I feel like have been those like trifecta of cities that will swap. Who has the highest murder rate over the year, or who has the most crime, and it has tended to be more Democrat cities. Look what's going on, in Portland and Seattle and all of those things. Those are all democratically ran cities. All the looting in New York, all the looting in, I'm in LA right now. I live in Santa Monica, 3 blocks from me. Everything was being torn down, in the name of peaceful protest, and it obviously devolved from there. Not to say that those people didn't have their peaceful protest, but it was used as a smokescreen for so many other things. And
Absolutely.
I feel like, to your point, what you describe, there. I feel like I've heard you say you are, fiscally conservative, and then you're socially liberal, which
Mm-hmm.
is the way that I would describe myself. Most of my friends would also, and I'm sure there's things that obviously that we differ on, but there has to be more people out there like us. I feel like that we're seeing is these the polarity of things, and it's like super left wing, burn the whole system down, or super right wing, and which obviously people be like neo-Nazis, and like I feel like you and I, or the people who want to have civil discourse, don't get the platform that we deserve and the attention that we deserve. So I'm thankful that things that you say, you're supporting contraception over the counter for women. Mm-hmm. That's not a traditionally conservative talking point. So that's incredibly progressive, but you are a huge supporter of President Trump. So that's, there's this, I like this kind of mix of who you are, and it just makes it a very interesting story.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess, for me, I'm a realist, right? Common sense, logical. A lot of people talk about defunding Planned Parenthood, but there's a lot of people, especially in Baltimore City, that depend on Planned Parenthood, and usually for the oral contraceptives. 35 countries already have oral contraceptives over the counter. We have lots of free clinics where they can go and do their pelvic exams, make sure they're good candidates, and do all the necessary steps to get that birth control without having to get a prescription for it. So why not have it just right over the counter so young women can, do a little family planning and take personal responsibility. And a lot of people don't understand. I don't know if it's just like a woman male thing, but, birth control isn't just because, maybe you're sexually active. Your hormones change when you go through, that situation. And so people have to understand that for a lot of women, it helps regulate their mood. It helps with acne. It helps with so many different things that they deal with as they're changing. So, I think it's something that we should have readily available to everybody.
Yeah, and I know that you refer to that as Plan A because you think that you've said that Plan B has being used as a contraceptive method, which obviously it's not. That's kind of like a worst case kind of emergency situation. But so you are in favor of defunding Planned Parenthood because I think, like you said, especially in Baltimore City, Detroit, I know a lot of inner cities and a lot of places, rural places as well. The access, I think it always comes down to access for women to have access to get those pelvic exams so that they can be eligible to get, because I know that's part of the plan is to be able to have that eligibility, is to be able to see a medical professional to make sure that you're healthy and can have the the contraceptive that you desire.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of people I don't think understand. So Planned Parenthood receives federal funding. And they're showing this data because there are so many women coming in to get that oral contraceptive. And so people know that is before conception. So this is, like you said, it's not the Plan B pill, which would be after, or, not sure whether or not, you have conceived. This is before conception. So women don't get to that fork in the road and have to choose between life and abortion. But when you knock out that data that Planned Parenthood presents to the federal government to get those funds, then you could essentially knock out Planned Parenthood altogether because they will no longer have that data to support the reasons that they need that funding.
Right. That's assuming, though, that there are public clinics that these women, I guess that's the other side of the problem, is just making sure, how do you ensure that these women will have access to that healthcare? Like I don't know. I obviously don't know the process on going to the doctor and having that happen, in a free type clinic.
Yeah, so free clinics, here in the Baltimore City area, they provide all of those things, the pap smear testing, like I said, the pelvic exams. So here in Baltimore City, it absolutely makes sense.
Excellent. And I watched an interview with you, and you said, which I find incredibly provocative, that you could turn Baltimore City around in 3 years. That was what you had said, and which I think is a crazy bold claim, especially someone who, growing up just outside of Detroit, I think they've been planning the 3 years for the last 30 years, and it's finally just starting to come around. So what would that plan of action, like day one, what does that plan of action look like?
Yeah, so we've been talking with the administration now, I don't know, for months. We've brought city leaders down to the White House to discuss opportunity zones and different things back in January. And so this is something where we want to hit the ground running as soon as I'm sworn in and ready to go. But career opportunities is what is lacking most here. But Baltimore used to be a manufacturing powerhouse. We lost all of that. And unfortunately, the leaders didn't do anything to replenish those jobs. And so as we saw with the lockdown and the pandemic, we rely on other countries for PPE. We're supposed to be the greatest country in the world, but here we are waiting on other countries to bail us out. Why not bring that billion-dollar medical equipment industry right back to America? Baltimore City, we have the second largest and used to be busiest port in the country, but we don't utilize it. Our port is actually the same size as a port in Connecticut, and they have lots of jobs. The submarines are there. They're doing things with wind energy. If we just had somebody there with some innovative ideas, bringing career opportunities to the area, that would solve a large portion of the problem. Another piece is fixing the Baltimore City public school system. We have 13 high schools where kids graduate unable to be proficient in math. That's a problem. So we have kids getting out of school not properly educated, and what do we expect them to do but be on the streets because, again, there's nowhere to work. So when we fix, I think, those two key components, I think we'll really start to see a big change. And I think that'll also change the mindset. Right now, you go into areas of West Baltimore and people just feel hopeless, and they'll tell you about it. You look around, there's 17,000 vacant homes in one area. How do you feel like there's hope for that?
Yeah, I saw that in when you were interviewing a few people in your first ad talking about defunding the police. And they're like, no, I think that's the problem when there's all of these slogans like, defund the police, no justice, no peace. Like there's no real end game to it. It's this slogan that it sounds really good. And especially for like white liberal people who are like, the people that seem to be leading the charge on black issues, which I think is the most hilarious irony anyways. It seems like a very white thing to do in a weird way. It's like, we're just going to come in, we're going to take over this movement as well. I think, like you say, it's about access. It's about opportunity. We come from, like, our country used to produce things. We used to make things all the time. Come from Detroit. My whole family was very blue collar in the auto industry. And it was just decimated. There was no production. Everything moved over, everything started moving overseas, and people didn't have access to those jobs. They didn't have access to good education. I know you're a fan of school of choice and letting parents be able to choose the education that they get. And, I'd love to hear more about your plan for education on that.
Yeah, so school choice is a big one. Going out and knocking door to door and talking to people face to face, almost everyone complains about the education system. They get it, they understand it. And so when I talk about school choice and what is so great about having a little competition for some of those schools that aren't performing at all, I talk to them, I say, look, do your kids play sports or want to play sports and they don't offer it at the schools? And in these areas, there's a lot of schools that don't have basketball teams. They don't have track teams. They don't have any of these things. And, this one woman was saying, yeah, my son would love to play basketball, but he goes to a school where they don't have a basketball team. And I said, Wouldn't it be great to be able to send your son to a school that has a basketball team, that has some of these extracurricular activities that he can get involved in? I think when you start putting that kind of competition out there, those other schools that are in those areas will then have to step up to the plate. It's tough. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, is there a way, obviously, then school of choice, you're going to have the other schools that will end up getting, the schools that have the music program or the sports program, they're going to end up getting that funding for that. Is there a way to fix the broken system? Just to play devil's advocate, is there a way to fix the system that exists as it is?
Right. So in Baltimore, we already have schools that predominantly get all the funding, right? There's, they call it Poly, there's Dunbar, there's like a list of probably 6 schools that is currently getting all of the funding anyways, Mervo, and a lot of those schools, the other schools are kind of just left with nothing to begin with. So, it's like, why not show then number wise, hey, look, you've got all these kids going to Mervo from this neighborhood because this neighborhood school isn't offering anything and they don't have any resources and they're not getting any funding. Like, people need to see this, so now we've got a bunch of kids in certain neighborhoods dealing with the crime, right? The violence, the gang violence, some of them afraid to even leave their house. And when they're supposed to be going to a school, the school gives them no hope either, because the education is poor there too. And they know that most of the kids that get out of that school end up right on their city streets. Right. So, there's a lot going on. It is complicated. But, to continue down this road with the same people in charge. I mean, just last year, I don't know if you saw, our mayor was indicted for pay to play. This is what we're dealing with, massive corruption. And when you have one party mob rule, you've got these people, they're all friends. They're keeping it between each other. And our Baltimore City Public School CEO is making $350,000 a year. Yet we've got kids not being educated. And she sends her daughter to a private school out in the county.
So she's not even, and that's the other thing is, that's the other thing is people aren't living where they play or working where they play. Essentially, it's they're not even a part of the actual community, which is smart, which I know that your plan, if you are elected, is to move into the neighborhood and actually embrace what's going on. Which
right.
Someone who
I mean, there's no way, to move there now. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in West Baltimore. I mean, it's so dangerous. And, I have a 4-year-old daughter. I have stepchildren. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is not an area where a lot of these streets where kids should even be, let alone playing outside and walking to school. So these are things that, we've got to get a handle on. And I just know current leadership right now has, there's no one to tell them, yes, they have to do it, because they take the votes for granted. They know people are going to vote down ballot most of the time for a Democrat. And, that's why we're working so hard to be out there 7 days a week. We're registering voters now 7 days a week. It
is interesting that there is a part of the 7th district, though, that is wealthier. Yeah. So
yes.
like, is that the side that is it just been, community activation, getting people in the West Baltimore area are they just not registered to vote? Are they do they just feel like the system is just going to keep doing the same thing it's always been doing, so they're caught in that cycle? Like, what is, like you said, you're registering people every single day. I think it's 60% of the community is Black. So it seems interesting that it keeps having this vicious cycle where there is no change. And obviously, the one thing to point at that has been going on for a very long time is that it has been democratically controlled. So to have someone such as yourself in there to mix it up would obviously seem to be the better option.
Yeah. And you were asking, why does this happen? I think it's a little bit of everything. There are a lot of people, my team will say, look, we talk to people that says, people always promise us that they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and then they never do it. Right. And so that's why they don't take part in the process. Then you have people that, move around constantly. Maybe they don't have a stable living place, and so they don't take part in the process. And then they've got people who do vote, but they vote down ballot. They don't really do their research on the candidates, or maybe they don't have time to. So there's a lot going on there. But, where you see the less amount of people voting, very interesting enough, are in some of the worst neighborhoods. And
the neighborhoods that need it the most.
Yeah, I'm like, you guys, you have to take part in the process. I don't care if you vote for me or not, but you've got to take part. I mean, look around you, and so, a lot of people do seem to be getting that and understanding. Another interesting thing, and I was just out there today in West Baltimore on Penn North Avenue. This young woman came up to me and she said, I think I want to vote for you, but we've got to get President Trump out of there. And I was like, that's interesting. I said, so what has President Trump done to make your life worse? Or has he put a policy in place that you don't like? And she just kind of looked at me because, a lot of people don't pay attention to the policies that he's even talking about. And I said, well, just let me ask you this. Was your life the same before 2016 when he was elected? Sure. And she was like, yes. And I said, all right, so it might not be President Trump. And, after we talked for about 5 minutes, she was like, okay, you have a good point there.
Well, I think that's a lot of people's, when they go to the ballot box, no matter what's going on, a lot of people will just go, okay, because obviously President Trump is a polarizing figure. I'm not a huge fan of him as the man. Just has a lot of, I'll ask you about that after this. I just think that people will ask themselves, is my life better than it was 4 years ago? And if it hasn't changed much, I think they're going to end up voting for, it's interesting. I think that there are a lot of people who think there's going to be this big change. And I don't know that, especially the more that these, the protests and chaos and everything keep going on, anybody who is, a more moderate or independent is going to say, hey, we need to, law and order is the thing that's going to provide safety, make people feel secure to be able to live their normal lives. Nobody wants to live in anarchy. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't understand anybody who would want to live like that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's interesting. We watch now the emails and the newsletters that my opponent sends out, and he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a platform. He doesn't talk about doing anything, in the community or in the district itself.
Well, he's been there forever.
He does take shots at me and President Trump, and just yesterday he released a newsletter saying that the reason the communities are so poor and look the way they do is because of redlining and policies put in place by President Trump. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. So,
well, I'm sure a portion of it's redlining, but redlining is obviously a serious issue, but policy, it's not like Baltimore didn't fall apart in the last 4 years. It's not,
right. Yeah.
It can't be directly tied to, obviously the president did have some unkind words to say about Baltimore City. And I'm sure hopefully he's depending on you to be able to help clean that up. But I guess my point is, why not run for mayor instead of why Congress?
Yeah. So, all of the funding that we get in the state of Maryland and in Baltimore City is federal funds. Right now, you've got $1.1 billion coming to Baltimore City annually. And that's been happening since 2015. You probably saw when we had our own riots here after the death of Freddie Gray. President Obama and Congressman Elijah Cummings worked out a plan to send $1.1 billion here. It hasn't even made it to the ground yet, and it's 2020, right? So first and foremost, we have to open the books and expose where all this money is going. We have to understand where it was supposed to be implemented, and then we have to understand why it wasn't done so. There's a lot going on, and I think, and I've talked to people in Trump's administration about they would love to, give the funding to Baltimore City, as much as they need. But I don't think it's a matter of us not having enough funds. I think it's mismanagement of funds, and I think
it's a distribution problem.
Exactly.
That's that's the crazy thing about this country. From obviously me, like I'm a classically trained chef. There is food enough in this country and in this world to feed people 10 times over. It's just that we can't get it to the right people, and the distribution is always completely off. So finding out where is that money going? You have, a billion, you need someone to get in there and dig around and see where is that money actually being spent.
Right. And that's, what we're going to be able to do on the federal level. And as I try to remind people, remember that the money that Baltimore City gets comes from the federal level, and so when you're sitting in Congress, hopefully you'll have a mayor and city council members and others that you can work with, so you can pull it all together. And
speaking of money, you have a very controversial plan to, I don't know all the nuances of it, but was to get people who are working on the streets to home ownership. Explain the process for that, because it sounds incredibly controversial, but incredibly exciting as well, because I think that is the problem. How much Black ownership of things are actually existing in that neighborhood.
Yeah, so most of the properties, and you probably saw again in the video, the campaign ad, all the crumbling infrastructure, but a lot of the properties are owned by the city. They're just sitting there, right? So for me, being out on the streets of West Baltimore, last July, I took the videos that President Trump saw, and he was talking about how it was rat infested, rodent infested. Meanwhile, he was really just repeating this young woman that I was interviewing at the time. But at that time, I started really talking to people on the streets and trying to figure out the issues and why it seemed that the area looked the way it did. By doing that, I met a lot of people, made some new friends, and I talked to a lot of guys that, they consider them, I guess, corner boys, that are nonviolent. They started maybe, selling drugs when they were 13, 14 years old, dad away in prison, mom, might not have been in the house, maybe addicted to something herself, in and out. And they had young siblings that they had to take care of and make sure they got food to eat, right? So there's a large population. You being in Detroit, I'm pretty sure about, corner boys and how many of them are not violent. And they, sure, are really, were out there to begin with to survive. And so that's why I call it survivor to investor. But a lot of these young men are making all of this money, and they're not putting it in the banks. They are basically just holding on to it because, again, it was made illegally, right? So just talking to some of them, I asked them, why not invest it in your community? And a lot of guys were saying, well, if I had an opportunity to do so, I would. So again, we have 17,000 vacant homes. A lot of people don't own their properties. Why not invest in the community, not displacing anybody, put those homes into a program where they can do rent to own, right? Then we got people with home ownership. If we're bringing in the biotech industry through the port, you've got career opportunities. We're talking about other things like bringing in, right now you see there's a trucker shortage across the nation. We've got people doing CDL licensing, even Allstate offers behind the wheel training, 6-week program, $2,000 a head. If we're getting $1.1 billion in federal funds, I'm pretty sure we can afford to help people with this $2,000 a head to get their CDL licensing so they can get jobs as truckers, so they can get jobs, with the medical equipment industry and what we're bringing through the port. And then on top of it, they'll have home ownership. See, I don't want anyone displaced, right? We see regentrification happen a lot. There's a lot of people that grow up in the area that have seen it bad their entire lives that deserve to see it turn around, and they should be there for it. And so for these young men, talking to them and saying, look, if we can put this money into these houses and we can revitalize them and flip them, we would do it. We don't want to be in that position. So I asked, why not give them amnesty for 365 days? They'll be in a program where, of course, they can't still be on the streets. They have to
because otherwise you're incentivizing drug dealing for the exchange of home ownership. So right. I understand. So you're just saying taking the existing funds that they have that are, off books everywhere, giving them an opportunity to invest in the community. And I'm sure what happens is if you did grow up in that community and you did, quote unquote, make it out, you're leaving. You're not actually putting, like if you got to a point where you felt like you don't have to live in West Baltimore, you're not going to live in West Baltimore. So Absolutely. No one's incentivized to keep the neighborhood alive. Because they're just, and then everyone stays down, and the people that break through, the very few people that break through, don't ever come back. Right. And there, we would have safeguards in place, again, to make sure they're not still on the streets. They would be in a program. There will be mentors. There will be, real estate developers that want to help out with this, to show them the way. This is a way, we talk about all the time that we want to get these kids off the streets, right? But trust me, with the amount of money they're making, they're not getting off the streets for a 9-to-5 job. Sure, people can stop saying that. I mean, it doesn't work, okay? Some of these kids are making $1,000 a day, right? Let's get them in a career and a lucrative business where they can be entrepreneurs because, let's face it, they kind of are already. And they can be real estate developers. And there's a lot of intelligent young men that happen to be in this situation. And if you live in a neighborhood where you're graduating from high school and you can't even be proficient in math or have, basic reading levels or any knowledge of, how to write properly, I mean, this is what they're dealing with, and it's like, why not give them the opportunity to go for the American dream like everybody else? We offer amnesty to illegal immigrants. That supposedly is a crime, right? We don't seem to treat it like that. We offer them amnesty, and now they're even in sanctuary cities. So when do we actually offer anything to the black man or white man or anybody that was born here as citizens that might have just gotten off the path but do want to make a change and be, contributing members of society? That's an incredibly, it's funny because I think that's the great thing is that you are very much not the atypical conservative, because that's not a very conservative. If someone heard that on the just surface and said, I'm sure someone could attack you like, oh, she wants to give homes to drug dealers and she wants to, keep perpetuating that. And obviously there's way more nuance to it and providing them a path. And I think that opportunity, to really rebuild the community is only going to happen if you have people who are from the community who actually take pride in that neighborhood, and you see it start to happen. Right. Instead of someone coming in and gentrifying the neighborhood, people who exist in the neighborhood actually bringing it up back to where, where it should be.
Right. And part of this program, so people know, we're not asking drug dealers to be your landlord, right? This is going to be a whole program where, again, they're learning the process. They are investing, they are, being able to revitalize, flip these homes. But again, we'll have mentors, we'll have, assistance where, these people that actually live in these homes, the rent to own program, there will be an overseer for it too. So, until they own the homes themselves. So it's a nice big program that I think really can work. And then it also at the same time tackles the war on drugs. When you get the corner boys off the street selling the drugs, you got less drugs on the streets. So I think it's a plan that would help everybody.
Do you support legalization of marijuana?
It's interesting that you say that. I am not sure if we have enough data to say whether or not it's the right way to go, right? So if you think about where I'm coming from, right? I look at what happened in the 90s, early 2000s. We had a lot of people locked up for a very small,
nonviolent drug offenders.
Literally having little bags of marijuana on them. And they were getting, heavy sentencings. And so now we want to make it legal. I get that. But I also want to figure out, are we going to do something as far as pardoning those individuals that are still sitting behind bars for something that we're going to legalize? I feel like there's a conversation that needs to be had that we're not really having.
I think when we talk about reform, I think prison reform is also something that needs to happen. Like defunding the police is not an option. It needs to be a huge reform and retraining of why. Look at the incarceration level of how many Black nonviolent drug offenders. And I think there should be some kind of, in my opinion, there should be some kind of program where all these people who were locked up for having, an ounce of weed on them or whatever, whatever the statute was at that time. And they're, the laws, the war on drugs, which really hasn't worked, has kept them in that situation and in the incarceration system. And it hasn't worked. So my thing is, like, if we just say, hey, we're not going to fight the war on drugs, we are going to legalize it. Because if you do legalize it, doesn't that eventually take the corner boys off the corner?
Yeah. But there's also, I would believe that. But this is why, again, I think my Survivor to Investor program is a good one. Because we look at a lot of these individuals, and coming out of prison, going back and forth, because there isn't actually any rehabilitation happening, right? So, there's a lot that needs to happen. And I'm willing to have that conversation. I know a lot of conservatives are not. I get that. I think even just talking about Survivor to Investor this past weekend, some conservatives were like, absolutely no,
Of course, yeah. It's definitely not a conservative talking point because I think that's the problem though, right? We live in this dichotomous society where it's either black or white, it's right or wrong. There's no, people don't understand, especially people who have never lived in a city or around a city, they don't understand the daily struggle of not having an opportunity, not having, whether you're white, black, or whatever, if there's no jobs and there's no way to have any economic freedom, that's your only, recourse is to start selling drugs or to do, get into crime because there really is no opportunity. So providing that opportunity should be something that if the hardcore right-wing Republicans don't like that, they should be in support of this because it's going to lower crime overall.
Right. Absolutely.
Because you're helping, these criminals, quote unquote criminals by everyone's, some people are just a victim of their circumstance, but you're helping these people who have gotten forgotten by society, who, to get back, to be able to give back.
Right. No, absolutely. And people, they should also take in consideration when you do something like that, when you rehabilitate one person in a family, that could change that entire family. That could change the entire community. It's like then that person becomes an advocate for doing things in a legal way, and going down a positive path in life. It's the same way
that it works the other way, right? They see, if you're in a family and your older brother sells drugs or you don't have a dad or, your only option for inspiration are those around you or those above you.
Right.
That trickles down the same way a positive message would trickle down.
Absolutely. And so, I was actually shocked because I thought I was going to get the most blowback on Facebook when I talked about Survivor to Investor. But there were a lot of conservatives who were like, you know what? Well, what do we have to lose by trying it? You know, the houses are sitting there vacant. The boys are on the corner. You know what I mean? Like, what do you have to lose by trying it? And so I was happy to see that some people were definitely interested in learning more.
Yeah, so. I mean, look at. I mean, I think that's a huge reason that Trump got elected. Everyone was as excited as you were and as excited as I was. I voted for Obama twice, and you make this whole change message, and then you get in, and it's kind of more of the same. I think people are kind of like, well, what do we have to lose? We've been doing this for 8 years, and we don't have what we want to have. Why not mix it up? I think that's probably the same. Someone could look at you and say, hey, you know what? Baltimore City's been democratically run for how many years? Just over and over. I mean, ran uncontested for so long. Right. Why not have someone in here that can mix it up? And you are obviously creating huge waves through all of your socials, all of your videos. You always look amazing. You are I feel like more of the face of the people who exist in this country, who are definitely more, obviously you're more conservative, but more in the middle of things, and being able to look at that both sides and try to make a better plan forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the only way we're going to unite this country is when you've got the people kind of in the middle, right? The moderates and the centrists. Otherwise, if you've got someone way to the left and way to the right, I mean, it is so hard to bring them together. Even now, I was shocked when I saw Congress, take their vacation before even doing anything about the second stimulus bill. I'm like, wait a minute, you're going on vacation. There's people that have lost their businesses, some people their homes during the pandemic. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
but, that's the kind of world we live in, I feel like.
That is amazing to me, and that's the thing that just pisses me off, is I see these people who are like, oh yeah, we're going to take our vacation. It's like, well, we've been on an imposed vacation for the last 6 months out of work. I was furloughed from my job. I depended on that money coming in, that extra, federal money coming in. I know a lot of people did. And to see people, to just feel misrepresented or unrepresented, people are just going to say, oh, we're going to go on our recess and we're going to come back when we come back, when there's so many people who depend on that. And like the line of people that are just at the line of poverty is so fine right now. And like that $600, in 1 week could put somebody completely homeless.
Right. I found it interesting, and I would be the kind of person that says, you know what, I'm not going to take my paycheck until the rest of, Americans can get their paycheck. We didn't see one person in Congress offer that,
No, my wonderful governor, my wonderful governor Newsom said that he was going to take a pay cut, made a big statement about it, and then never actually took the pay cut. And we have a state full of riots, crazy taxing. It's on fire. Everyone wants to blame, climate change, which, part of that's climate change. Part of that is poor management of the lands. So there's just, I completely feel your pain on that. But, talking about being divided, do you think America is racist?
No, absolutely not. And this is what's so crazy to me. I hear over and over again that there are racist policies in place. That's interesting, because if you've got somebody like Joe Biden, right? He's been a politician for almost 50 years now. My opponent, Kwesi Nkrumah, he was in office since 1987. You've got all these people in place that have been there for a very long time. Why on earth did they not change these racist policies? And how on earth did they get ahead with these racist policies in place? Like, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it does seem like racist policies, unarmed black men being shot. It seems like it's everyone makes it seem like it's a last 4 years thing. When unfortunately, if you go back to Obama, which was, there's Michael Brown, there's all of the Eric Garner's, Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't a new, and I don't know, you can't, and I'm not saying that it's not directly related to the president, right? There has to be police reform. You can't just be like, Obama didn't get blamed for Trayvon Martin, but yet every unarmed black man that's shot, in the country now, it's like, it's Trump's fault. Right. I don't really love the way that he responds to it all the time, because I think he could be a little more articulate and gentle in the way that he kind of, he will go towards supporting the police officer first. But again, everyone sees it. You see a video, and you see anyone who disagrees with the fact that George Floyd was murdered. It's pretty clear. It's on tape. It's just I think that there's so many other cases where there is a lot of nuance that does get lost, and then the president just ends up getting blamed for it.
Yes, absolutely, and I don't understand it either. But I guess this is the times that we live in, where everything is so polarizing. I'm someone I'm a supporter of President Trump, and talking to people in his administration and knowing how badly they want to help out in Baltimore City, and make it I guess they're calling it the Baltimore comeback. They really do want to, and so it's to see people like Brian Stetler on CNN or other people talking about how much President Trump or myself dislike Baltimore. It's that can't be anything further than the truth. It's we want to help, we want to do more, and it's not even that complicated. That's why I gave it a 3-year time frame. It's not that complicated. It's just a matter of somebody wanting to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think for anyone who just say that you hate Baltimore would be, I think that exposing truths and being just complete, really just ripping the Band-Aid back and showing people this is what it really is like. This is what West Baltimore, you were walking, that wasn't a set. You didn't make those streets up. Like, these are the actual things that the Black community is facing in that area. And I think, obviously President Trump was a little less eloquent about it, saying that things are rat infested, and those things may be true to a degree, but it's not the whole city. But I think that, you're also boots on the ground, literally, or those red heels on the ground, walking through the city and showing people, because I think a lot of people don't realize what daily life looks like there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say this, if it wasn't true, right, why didn't CNN or MSNBC, why didn't they show up with their cameras and show people that it wasn't true? That's because it is. I saw so many people saying, well, that's just a few blocks. It's not. These are huge neighborhoods. This is what more than half of Baltimore City looks like. And so it's interesting. Even our downtown, there was once the Inner Harbor used to look great. Now it's in receivership. I mean, you go around downtown where it once was not even 10 years ago, beautiful. And lots of people hanging out there. Yeah. And now crime and violence, people didn't want to go to Camden Yards anymore to see the baseball games. Not that we can, right, because of the COVID lockdown. But it's totally different now. It's totally different. And it happened, it seems so quickly. So, I think that's why just as quickly we can get it back and going. It's just, again, putting the right people in place.
So what if for some reason President Trump doesn't get, because I know you've fully attached yourself to the Trump train. What does a post-Trump America look like? What does a post-Trump?
You're saying, what if he does not get in and I do, or if we don't get in? Or,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think that you're so heavily involved, and I think that a lot of people attach themselves to the president. They get a big endorsement, and it does help. Obviously, there is a Trump bump in the polls where supporting him gives you that reciprocal support. What does, let's say he gets out, does that? What's the next move for Kim Klacik? I know that obviously your whole platform isn't, the president, but what does that landscape look like for you? Do you think conservatives are going to go back to being normal conservatives, or do you think that the change that got made in the last 4 years is going to continue down that road?
Well, I think that, say that he's not reelected and I am elected. I will definitely, go to the Biden-Harris administration and show them what we were working on and what we can do to change Baltimore. I have no problem with working across the aisle. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she is also for oral contraceptives over the counter. So I have no problem with working across the aisle. I think that's the best thing we can do. I think even showing that on that level would help unite the country. I don't know why members of Congress do not do it more. But yeah, so I'm not opposed to working across the aisle. As far as the GOP is concerned, I don't know if you probably saw, there were a lot of speakers at the RNC convention that are Black Americans, and it's not something you typically see at the RNC convention. And I really do believe it was President Trump that kind of extended that olive branch, asking minorities basically, what do you have to lose? And, why not give the Republican Party a chance? And so we saw a lot of minorities jump ship in the past 4 years, and going over to the Republican Party to see, what it was like. And I think, honestly, that has opened some doors. I know here in District 7 and in Baltimore City, Baltimore County, I meet many Republicans that said, you know what, I guess we really didn't think about it. A lot of them thought, the Baltimore City will never win. So they kind of write it off, right? They didn't go into communities and try to get those votes because they just assume people are going to vote down ballot. And I get that.
Sure.
But I think now people are starting to wake up and saying, you know what, let's not write off the inner cities. Let's go offer an option. I myself don't plan to go anywhere. Even if I don't win, I still want to be there for the Republican Party here in Maryland, and also for the Republicans across the country that just want to see the party change and embrace more minorities. And that's why I said it in my RNC convention speech. Stop writing off these inner cities. You got to be able to embrace all. It's 2020. It's 2020. I mean, what are we doing at this point if we can't all really be neighbors and friends? And if you are, speaking the gospel, if you are conservative and you're about, the Bible, and the church, and really, asking your neighbor to be your friend, asking them if they need help, doing what the Bible tells us to do and accepting others, then you should be able to do this as well. And so, if you preach about it, it should be about it.
I think I 100% agree with you. And I think that's to your point of being able to reach across the aisle and make change. We are so siloed in all of our information, all of our news is just like, you're either left, you're either right. There is no one who, like, there is no civil discourse anymore. There is no, hey, I'm going to listen to what you have to say. Even if, you and I probably don't agree on every single thing, but we can have a discussion about that. And I'm not screaming at you. I'm not trying to do some kind of gotcha journalism where, I'm trying to call you out on something, which I can't stand, call out culture, cancel culture.
Right.
That canceling someone doesn't give that other person the opportunity to, we're in a country where, we expect people to be able to be rehabilitated, but yet we want to cancel people. So I don't know how that works out. But what, like you said, to your point is, we are, and I guess this is for me too, we are way more alike than we are different. And I think that you're not hearing those points of view. So that was one of the real huge reasons that I wanted to start this podcast, is there's no room, there's no space for nuance. There's you're either with me or you're against me. And like you said, it's like, why don't we, if we want to talk about the Bible, and I'm not a hyper religious person, but just the tenets of the Bible saying, do unto others as you want others to do unto you. Treat your neighbor as your brother. Why is that being lost? It's like, you see somebody who has, someone has a Trump sign and you immediately, like, you have this visceral reaction, or someone has a Joe Biden sign and you immediately have this visceral reaction. There's way too many of those people kind of getting a platform and a megaphone that they're being heard the loudest, but I don't feel like it's representative of the greater part of America.
Yeah,
what did you think about that?
I agree. It's that silent majority, right? I think a lot of people, and even we see in the media on news, it's the most, what do you say, the most crazy left wing or the most crazy right wing person that actually gets the airtime, right? Even when I do media hits, even before running, I'd been on Fox News and One America News, and I wouldn't call the booker would call me, but I could tell in certain situations they were looking for that person giving that high ratings, that they know they'll get in a fight, it won't be a debate, it'll be an actual fight. And so it's, the media definitely plays a part in this. But I guess we have to be strong within ourselves and say, look, this isn't right. This isn't something that I'm going to watch and give ratings to. We got to make a change. And I think, honestly, like you said, I think there's more people like you and I that are willing to sit down and have these discussions and figure things out. I guess we just have to be that bigger voice.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think that is a good spot to end the politics discussion. And I like to end, I'm starting this now. I don't know if you've ever seen inside the actor's studio. There's so they ask questions to people, and it's based on the Proust questionnaire. And I just think it's just an interesting way to get to know more about you and you as a human and as a woman. And I think I have like 6 questions. I'm just gonna, whatever first thing that comes to your head, and just roll just roll with it. So I think the
Okay.
first one is not, it's not a Proust one, but it's one that I think is just relevant. What did you learn about yourself in the quarantine?
What I learned about myself in the quarantine, that I'm a people person. I think, not being able to go out and, hang out and socialize, but also, like I said, I was running in the special election when the lockdown happened, and I couldn't go door to door. I couldn't go talk to people. And here we are trying to do these virtual Facebook things, to get people's attention. And I just rather be with people. So I definitely learned that about myself. Yeah, quarantine
Brilliant.
it was an eye opener for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely the kind of person who I thrive way more with. I would much rather have you in the studio, face to face, and just me. I'm a
Yeah.
people person. I like to be out there talking to everybody. So that was kind of the hardest thing. It was good quality family time for me, but definitely it was testing on all other fronts.
Yeah.
Which historical figure do you identify most with?
Ooh. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am a huge fan, huge fan. And, I feel like we've really gotten away from some of the things that he used to preach. And I know a lot of people talk about when he says, hopefully there will be a day where you're judged by the content of your character rather than the color of your skin. And here we are in 2020, almost like going backwards on that. And now everyone's talking about, what color you are, what pronoun you're using. And we're putting people in these boxes instead of just judging people for who they are. So, I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, identity politics has definitely taken over the major news sphere. What trait do you most deplore in others?
Which one do I deplore? Oh my gosh. Gosh. I guess when people aren't open-minded. I've had conversations with people and I think, sometimes you have a conversation with someone and they'll approach you, right? And they'll say, "Hey, can you tell me why you support President Trump?" And I'll start speaking and they're like, "Well, he's a racist. He's this, he's that." And I'm thinking, you literally just asked me to explain to you why I support President Trump. And so it's like, again, I guess we're really talking about the same things over and over again, being able to discuss and have dialogue with people instead of just shutting down and saying, "Oh, you're wrong, you're right," or shaming someone for supporting a certain individual. I just want to get back to those days where we could just all be friends and be fine with each other, no matter the political beliefs.
Beautiful. I love when someone asks you what your opinion is, and then they immediately offer their opinion right on top of
Yeah,
it. It's always
yeah. You're just like, why did you
great,
stop me for this?
great conversation starter. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your greatest fear?
Oh my gosh, my greatest fear. All right, so there's twofold here. I fear that this whole rioting and looting thing is going to take over every major city. Like, I'm getting nervous because it seems to be spreading. And, we know exactly what happens. In 2015, we saw, the riots, and we are still rebuilding from that. And I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. And now we see all of these riots popping up all over the country. That is a fear of mine. That is a fear. And then I have a personal fear, which people make fun of me for all the time. But I am deathly afraid of birds. I will cross the street to not walk by a pigeon. Birds creep me out. I don't know what it is about them. But
I've never heard that one.
Oh my gosh, yes, I get made.
I thought you were gonna say spiders or ants or worms or snakes. It was
I would rather be in a box of snakes than have to walk by a bird. I don't know why, but it is just not for me.
Is it when they you startle them and they just flap really quick and it's
Yeah. Yes. No, I was at the beach 2 weeks ago. My daughter, she's 4 years old, and she would run at the seagulls and be like, "My mommy's afraid of you. Don't come near us." And I'm just like this at the beach because everybody's looking at us.
She's your little protector.
Thanks. Yeah.
I love it. So what is your most treasured possession?
My daughter. My daughter. Yes.
As
I
a
love
new
her
father.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I have one. She's 4, and she's literally the most precious thing ever. I'm actually going to go pick her up today. We're going to do a commercial ad for the campaign, and it's just going to be like me and her together. And I get to talk about the joy of being a mother and why it's so important to, again, have school choice and have these opportunities for kids as they grow. Because I know, no matter the circumstances, there are many mothers like myself that just want the best for their children.
And I think I love that you're doing that, because as a new father myself, my son just turned 2.
Congratulations.
People will see you on TV, or they'll see you in a campaign ad that's you obviously being a strong woman walking through the streets of Baltimore, which is very threatening to some people. But they forget that you are a human. We're all humans. We're not perfect. We're mothers, we're fathers, you're a wife, there's so much more to this story. I love that you are working to, really humanize, beyond politics, because I think you get so caught up on the issues. This is what I stand for. It's like, well, I'm a regular person who wants to help regular people. And I love that message.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep. Hopefully it gets across.
Yeah. And last but not least, what is your motto?
So this is funny. I actually had the motto in my senior year yearbook. You know how you put the little inscription under your yearbook picture?
Yeah, sure.
And I would say it's easier to apologize than to ask permission. That was my motto growing up. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. If it's wrong, I'll apologize. I'll take personal responsibility for it. But, now that I'm older, I guess the one of, do unto others as you want done to you. I see so much now where, people expect you to treat them a certain way, yet they don't give you that same courtesy. I guess, it's funny. I think earlier you were talking about how I said I was socially liberal and fiscally conservative. That's true. We've gotten so far away from just respecting each other. We've got to go back to that. I even cringe when I see young adults, walking out of a grocery store, not even holding the door open for someone, a senior citizen behind them with a cane. Like, how does that not even, go into your mind to stop and hold the door and see if they need help? Like, do we not teach that anymore? I don't know.
We're in the me generation. This is the thing. You're now seeing the direct result of everybody's individuality counts for more than, what they have to give back. It's all the participation trophy parents, the helicopter parents who gave, I'm not saying that give your child all the love in the world. I'm sure you can agree with this. You want to do that, but you have to let them know how to respect other people, how to respect themselves, how to be able to not to look outside of themselves is a huge point that I think gets completely lost. And I definitely agree with you. It's much easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. And I like that you're unapologetic. And I think that's a key to, your continued success, is that you are going to do things your own way. And I thank you so much for taking the time with me today. And where can everyone find more about you?
Yep. So KimKforCongress.com is the website. There are links to my social media, but Twitter is Kim K Baltimore, and Facebook and Instagram is Kimberly Klacik. I should probably change that to Kim Klacik, but I've always been Kimberly growing up. But when we went to go make the campaign signs, Kimberly Klacik was just so ridiculously long that we had to make it Kim Klacik. So Kimberly Klacik, if you just put that in, you should be able to find me easily.
Sounds good. Well, continued good luck, and I'll be watching you as everyone else will. Have a wonderful, wonderful run.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.